The old man's hands trembled as he knelt beside the shivering sparrow, its wing bent at an unnatural angle, feathers matted with dew and dirt. The alley behind his crumbling Brooklyn tenement was no place for a bird, no place for anything soft or small. Edwin Carter, 72 years old, with a face carved by decades of loss and labor, felt a pang in his chest as he watched the creature struggle. Its tiny heart pulsed beneath his fingertips, fragile as a whisper. He couldn't walk away, not from this. Edwin's life had been a quiet erosion. Once a machinist with steady hands and a wife who laughed like summer rain, he now lived alone in a one-room apartment, surrounded by the ghosts of better days. His wife, Clara, had passed 10 years ago, and their only son, Michael, had drifted away, first to college, then to a life across the country, his calls growing rarer until they stopped. Edwin filled his days with routine, coffee at the corner diner, a walk through the park, and evenings with a worn copy of Moby Dick, its pages yellowed from years of rereading. But the sparrow, helpless and small, broke the rhythm of his solitude. He scooped it up, cradling it in his scarf, and carried it upstairs. His apartment smelled of stale coffee and liniment, the air heavy with the weight of unchanging days. Edwin fashioned a makeshift nest from a shoebox and a dish towel, setting it on the kitchen counter. He didn't know much about birds, but he knew pain. He dribbled water into its beak with a dropper and crumbled bits of bread nearby, hoping it would eat. The sparrow's eyes, black and glossy, met his, and for a moment Edwin felt seen. Not as the old man who shuffled through life unnoticed, but as someone who mattered. By morning, the bird was gone. Edwin stared at the empty shoebox, his heart sinking. The window was cracked open, just enough for a determined flutter. He told himself it had flown, that it was strong enough to survive. But doubt gnawed at him. Had it been too weak? Had a cat found it? He pushed the thought away and went about his day, the alley's gray light filtering through his window, casting shadows on the walls. That afternoon, a knock startled him. Edwin rarely had visitors. No one came to see a man who'd outlived his connections. He opened the door to find a stranger standing there, a woman in her late 30s, her dark hair pulled back in a loose braid. She wore a faded green coat and carried a canvas bag slung over one shoulder. Her eyes, sharp and searching, locked onto his with an intensity that made him step back. "Are you Edwin Carter?" she asked, her voice low but clear, tinged with an accent he couldn't place, maybe Eastern European, maybe something else. He nodded, wary. "Who's asking?" "My name is Lena," she said, offering no last name. "I need to speak with you. It's important." Edwin hesitated. He wasn't one for strangers, especially not in a city where trust was a luxury. But something in her gaze, earnest, almost pleading, made him step aside. "Come in, then." She sat at his small kitchen table, the shoebox still there, a quiet reminder of the morning's loss. Lena glanced at it but said nothing, her fingers tracing the edge of her bag. "I heard what you did," she began. "The bird. You helped it." Edwin frowned. "How'd you know about that?" She didn't answer directly. "I'm here because of it, because of you." He leaned back, crossing his arms. "Lady, I don't know what you're talking about. It was just a bird. It's gone now, anyway." Lena's expression softened, but her eyes didn't waver. "Nothing is just anything, Mr. Carter, not when it's done with care." Edwin felt a flush of discomfort. He wasn't used to praise, certainly not for something so small. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice gruff to mask his unease. Lena reached into her bag and pulled out a small leather-bound notebook, its edges frayed. She slid it across the table. "Open it." He did, reluctantly. The pages were filled with names, dates, and brief descriptions, written in a neat, slanted script. Some entries were in English, others in languages he didn't recognize. Beside, each name was a small sketch, a flower, a coin, a bird. His name was on the last page, dated yesterday, with a tiny drawing of a sparrow. "What is this?" he asked. his voice barely above a whisper. Lena leaned forward. It's a record of people who do something selfless, something kind without expecting anything in return. You're in it now. Edwin's skepticism flared. You're telling me you go around watching people help birds and write their names in a book? Why? She smiled, but it was a sad, fleeting thing. Not just birds. Any act of kindness. I've been doing this for a long time, Mr. Carter. Longer than you'd believe, and I'm not alone. He closed the book, pushing it back toward her. This sounds like a scam, or a cult. I'm not interested. Lena didn't flinch. I'm not asking for money, or for you to join anything. I'm here to offer you something. He raised an eyebrow. And what's that? A chance, she said simply, to see what your kindness can do. Edwin wanted to laugh, to tell her to leave, but her words stirred something in him. A memory of Clara's voice, soft and certain, telling him he was a good man. He hadn't felt like one in years. I'm too old for chances, he said finally. Whatever you're selling, I don't need it. Lena stood, tucking the notebook back into her bag. You don't have to decide now, but I'll be back. Think about it, Edwin. Think about what you want your life to mean. She left as quietly as she'd come, leaving Edwin alone with the echo of her words. He sat there for a long time, staring at the empty shoebox, wondering what had just happened. The city hummed outside, car horns, distant sirens, the pulse of a world that had long since moved on without him. But Lena's visit lingered, a pebble in the still water of his life. Next day, Edwin woke with a restlessness he couldn't shake. He went to the diner, ordered his usual black coffee, and watched the morning crowd. Young professionals tapping at laptops, mothers corralling kids, an old woman feeding crumbs to pigeons outside. He thought about Lena's notebook, the names, stretching across pages across time. What was the point of it, and why him? On his walk home, he passed the alley where he'd found the sparrow. Something caught his eye, a flash of movement. He froze, heart pounding, as a small bird hopped into view. It was a sparrow, its wings still slightly crooked but functional, pecking at the ground. Edwin's breath caught. It couldn't be the same one, could it? But those glossy eyes met his again, and he swore they held recognition. That evening, Lena returned. This time she didn't knock. She was simply there, sitting at his table when he came back from the bathroom, as if she'd always been part of the room. Edwin's pulse quickened, but he didn't ask how she'd gotten in. Somehow he knew it didn't matter. You saw it, she said. Not a question. He nodded, sitting across from her. The bird. It's alive. Because of you, she said. That's why I'm here. Your kindness, it's a spark. It can start something bigger. Edwin's patience thinned. Stop talking in riddles. What do you want from me? Lena's gaze softened, but her voice was firm. There's a place. A network, you could call it. People like you, who've done something selfless. We find them, and we give them a choice. To keep that spark alive. To make a difference in ways they never imagined. What kind of difference? He asked, his curiosity outweighing his doubt. She hesitated, as if weighing how much to reveal. There's a community in need not far from here. Families, kids, people who've been forgotten. They need someone like you, someone who knows what it's like to feel invisible. You could help them, Edwin. Not with money, but with time. With care. Edwin's first instinct was to refuse. He was old, tired, with creaking joints and a heart that ached more than it beat. But then he thought of the sparrow, of Clara's laugh, of the years he'd spent waiting for something to matter again. What would I have to do? He asked. Lena smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. Come with me. See for yourself. Against his better judgment, Edwin followed her. They took a bus to a part of Brooklyn he rarely visited, where the buildings sagged under the weight of neglect. Lena led him to a community center, its paint peeling but its windows bright with light. Inside, people bustled, volunteers serving, food, kids drawing on butcher paper, an old man teaching a teenager to play chess. It was chaotic, alive, and Edwin felt a pull he hadn't expected. "This is where it starts," Lena said. "You could teach, listen, help. Whatever you're able. Your name's in the book now, that means something." Edwin spent the evening there, hesitant at first, then drawn in. He helped a young girl with her math homework, her shy smile reminding him of Michael at that age. He listened to a woman talk about losing her job, her voice breaking as she spoke. He didn't have solutions, but he had time, and he gave it freely. Days turned into weeks. Edwin became a regular at the center, his mornings no longer filled with coffee and silence but with purpose. He taught kids to read, fixed wobbly chairs, shared stories of his days as a machinist. The sparrow's shoebox sat on his shelf, a quiet symbol of the moment his life had shifted. Lena appeared now and then, never staying long. She'd check her notebook, add a name, and move on. Edwin never asked where she went or who she was, though he suspected she wasn't entirely of this world. Her accent shifted sometimes, Spanish one day, Hindi the next. And her eyes held, a depth that spoke of centuries, not years. But he didn't need answers. The work was enough. One evening, as winter crept into the city, Edwin found a letter in his mailbox. It was from Michael. His son wrote of regret, of wanting to reconnect, of hearing through a friend about Edwin's work at the center. "I'm proud of you, Dad," the letter read, and Edwin's eyes stung as he traced the words. The climax came on a snowy night, when the center held a holiday gathering. The room was packed, volunteers, families, strangers who'd become friends. Edwin stood at the front holding a candle, his voice steady as he spoke about Clara, about the sparrow, about second chances. The crowd listened, their faces glowing in the candlelight, and Edwin felt a warmth he hadn't known since Clara's hand last held his. As he finished, a small figure slipped through the crowd. It was the girl from the math homework, now holding a drawing. A sparrow, its wings spread wide. "For you," she said, and Edwin's throat tightened. He took the drawing, his hands trembling not from age, but from something deeper, something alive. Lena was there, in the back, her notebook tucked under her arm. She met his gaze and nodded, then slipped out into the snow. Edwin knew he wouldn't see her again. Her work was done, and his was just beginning. Years later, Edwin's name would still be spoken at the center, his story woven into its walls. The sparrow drawing hung in his apartment, a reminder of the day a small act of kindness had cracked open his world. He'd found purpose, not in grand gestures, but in the quiet power of showing up, of caring when no one else did. And somewhere, in a notebook carried by a stranger who was more than she seemed, his name lived on, a testament to the truth that no act of humanity is ever too small to change a life.